Folks in Jackson, Mississippi are mourning today following the death of Mayor Chokwe Lumumba. Lumumba, an outspoken proponent for black self-determination, he died Tuesday reportedly of heart failure. He was 66. He served one term on the Jackson City Council and was sworn in as mayor in July. During his brief time in office, Lumumba persuaded voters to approve a tax increase in order to shore up the city's failing infrastructure. A Detroit native, Lumumba was born Edward Talifero and changed his name to reflect his abiding black pride. He was a prominent lawyer, human rights activist, and he, again, was a strong figure who Jackson, Mississippi residents there were really looking forward to his leadership. He became a subject of an FBI scrutiny when he served as vice president of the Republic of New Africa Group. Lumumba was under watch by the FBI. There will be a special election to determine a new mayor in the coming weeks. Lumumba was 66 years old. Ohio voting hours are under assault. There will be fewer hours to vote in this fall's midterm elections. Secretary of State John Husted, a Republican, says he's cutting early voting on Sundays and weekday evenings. This follows an action by Governor John Kasich, who signed bills cutting 6 more days from the early voting period, ending same-day registration and making it harder to vote by absentee ballot. All this spells trouble for minority and low-income voters who often need extended voting hours because of work schedules. Together, the restrictions could significantly reduce minority turnout this fall and in 2016, potentially dealing another blow to the voting rights efforts in the nation's most pivotal swing state. All right, I want to introduce our panel right now. Elroy Saylor from J.C. Watts Companies, Lauren Victoria Burke from Politic365.com, and political commentator Jeff Johnson with Illum Communications. Let me go with this Ohio deal, and because Elroy, I want to start with you.
All right.
This is, to just cut to the chase, what pisses me off. Republicans, and no Republican should defend this nonsense. First, it was voter ID, all about to prevent voter fraud. Now, all of a sudden, in North Carolina, cut early voting. Georgia, there's a bill to cut early voting from 21 days to 6 days. Now this effort to say, oh, we're going to have uniform hours, so you have to vote between 7 and 4. So if you work, you're screwed.
Right.
And this whole idea of no voting on Sunday.
Right.
This is a clear effort to suppress voting.
Well, you know, Roland, you and I agree and disagree on a lot of stuff, and on this one, I'm going to tend to agree with you. You know, the Republican Party on voting rights has not necessarily taken the best approach when it comes to what you would call suppressing voter rights, what Republicans would call, you know, economics or improving efficiencies or streamlining or some of those other phrases that they would use. But I would like to say that there are some strong Republicans, Sensenbrenner, who worked really hard on the Voting Rights Reauthorization Act. You've got Senator Rand Paul, who's traveling the country, meeting with folks that look like you and I, talking about restoring voting rights for felons. On this one, you know, Republicans, and John Kasich, I'm surprised. He served in the House with Congressman J.C. Watts when I was there. And Congressman Kasich has always been a pretty level fellow when it comes to issues that impact our community. I would really like to get down to Ohio. I've got some relationships and some friends down there, and find out exactly what is their rationale for doing this.
I can tell you what the rationale is. The rationale is to win. And so the Republicans are doing what they can to prevent the people who vote traditionally non-Republican to get to the polls. And so this isn't new, right?
But there's always an argument that Republicans use, and I don't understand.
I'm talking
what
about the reality.
Is. Right.
So I'm not concerned about the argument of somebody who's disingenuous.
Right.
I'm talking about the fact that this was a piece of legislation that got beat back when the Obama campaign sued the state of Ohio.
Right.
Took the state of Ohio to court, right, and won that case to be able to ensure that some of those hours stayed in place. Anytime you're talking about not keeping early voting open past 5 o'clock in the evening, anytime you're talking about removing Sunday voting, you're talking about
for no reason at all.
Well, there's a reason.
But that's my point.
The messaging
to kill
talks
souls
about,
to the polls. It kills souls to the polls.
Right, but to Elroy's point, the messaging is uniformity. How do we create uniformity? But uniformity should be about access, not uniform rejection.
Lauren, go right ahead.
It's not about uniformity.
It's not at all.
It's about suppressing the vote, suppressing the black vote specifically. This is what makes ridiculous all this Reince Priebus RNC jazz about wanting to attract black voters. On the one hand, you have Rand Paul out talking about felon voting and Senator Mike Lee. And on the other hand, you're suppressing the black vote all across the country. This is Republican policy. They're not even bothering with the excuse of voter fraud. They're not even bothering with that. They're basically, I mean, at this point, they may as well just declare that they're trying to suppress the black vote, which is exactly what they're doing.
And this is one from state to state because, again, North Carolina passed it.
Right.
Now there's a bill in Georgia.
Right.
Now you see this in Ohio. We saw it in Florida in 2012. Only reason they changed it in Florida because they got so much criticism from the long lines that Governor Scott had no choice to say, we might want to go back and increasing the days. But to sit here and I'm still waiting for any of them to tell me, so voting on Sunday was cool before.
They're not bothering.
It was no problem.
They're not bothering to tell you
But how all of a sudden, now is that a good idea?
But I think that's the point. When Jeff started talking about uniformity and started having, I think when we tend to have a subjective argument and we talk about they're suppressing the vote, souls to the poll, that's good fodder for the listeners.
No, but it's true.
It's true.
But here's what I'm saying.
Not good fodder. It's true.
But when you really want to try where we've been most successful as a black Republican, where I've been most successful, where folks like Roland, Jeff, Hillary Shelton, when we've engaged in certain debates, when we find that Republicans are not doing something that's in the best interest, we focus on the facts of uniformity. You stay away from all of the rhetoric. If you focus on the facts, then you can
I can guarantee you one thing. You'll never hear black Republican.
Let's deal with those
You'll never
facts.
hear a black Republican come out against what Ohio just did.
You'll
never hear Tim Scott.
So when you say never, that's an absolute.
Let's talk about black Republican elected officials. Let's talk about Tim Scott. Let's talk about people who were in office like Allen West. Let's talk about black Republicans who run something coming out against us.
Let's talk about reasonable discussion, right? Because that's what you said. If we're talking about reasonable discussion and you want to create uniformity, uniformity should be created in a level of consistency with what's currently there to ensure access, not deny access. And if we're going to create uniformity, there has been no challenges that Sunday voting was problematic, that early voting was problematic, and you're dealing with a state that has traditionally dealt with long lines and challenges at the polls. Why create
Hold tight 1 second. We're going to continue that conversation when we come back. Let me pay some bills first. Folks, later in the show, Young and the rest of the star, Christoph St. John, shares why his latest project is so personal. It is a documentary you don't want to miss. Also, can you find success after prison? The answer is yes. Judge Greg Mathis and Fred Huxton tell their stories. Also, Jay Leno delivers some good news to Arsenio Hall, and we've got our weekly segment, What the Hell? That could be the case when it comes to these voting changes. Hit me up with your thoughts on Twitter at NewsOne or at Roland S. Martin, or go to our NewsOne Facebook page. 20 minutes after the hour, this is NewsOne Now on TV1.